All right, we're going to go ahead and get started. My name is Jennifer McMillan, and I am the Social Emotional Wellness Liaison in the Camas School District. And I'm really excited to introduce our wellness speaker tonight. He's somebody that I've actually known for a long time, and I've been in the audience watching Howard speak before, and I've actually taken classes from him. Howard is an expert on boys. He knows lots of things. He helped co-create a curriculum for boys. I refer loads of people myself to Howard, and I don't do that lightly. I'm kind of picky, so that speaks. I speak very highly of Howard. He has a lot of wisdom and knowledge around a lot of things. So tonight we've invited him here to talk about competitiveness and high expectations. I would encourage you to take a look at Howard's website. He has loads of resources around how to communicate with boys and just a lot of really good information. So please join me in welcoming Howard.
Thank you, Jennifer. So I think if I speak at this volume, can you hear me in the very back row? Is that okay?
Actually, can you?
Would you prefer a microphone? Yeah, happy to. I just can't be way up there when there's so few of you down here. So I want to be more warm and closer to you. So, this okay? So, what do I want to start with? I guess competition and high expectations. Like, what's good, what's bad? I'm really curious to hear how that plays out at Camas High School. Competition and high expectation, and in and of themselves, it's good to strive. It's good to grow. It's good to develop. It's good to have, as parents, have high expectations for our kids. The challenge comes in when we need to win, we need to achieve something outside of ourselves to feel like we're okay, or when we always must be at the very top. And it's under those circumstances that we can lose sight, we can get laser focused on the outcome and not the process, and we can get laser focused on having some sort of, is it possible to get this turned down a little bit? Because it's really blaring at my, thank you. Maybe I'll just hold it out here. So one of the challenges is when we get laser focused on the outcomes and lose sight of all the other things that are important for our children in terms of their health and their growth. And that happens sometimes. And sometimes that the expectations and competition is intrinsic within our kids. Sometimes it happens because it grows out of our community. Sometimes it's because it's something that we share, that we subtly or not so subtly impose on our kids. And it's a topic that I've been asked to speak to a lot of schools about. So I'll share a little bit of that background with you, but I want to tell you a story, I guess. I'm going to start with this, to talk to you about I have a 21-year-old son who's a college junior, and a almost 17-year-old son who's a high school junior. And they've both, and family life has been tricky for us. It's turned out that I've single parented my boys for the last 5 years, given challenges at home, and that's how things have worked out. And so my younger son especially, I've had a lot of concerns about. And he had this situation. This is like real life, and it's kind of, I just decided I was going to tell you this story, even though it's heavy, but it's real, and there'll be something in here that you relate to. He's a high-powered academic kid. He's a junior, he takes 4 AP classes or something, and plays piano, takes piano lessons. He was performing in the high school musical, playing the piano. He's on the cross-country team and the track team. And all from his own drive. For whatever reason, it's what he's thought he's had to do. And for a long time, I've been worried about he struggles with anxiety as a result of this machine that's working inside of him, right? Familiar. And he thinks he's coping. And in a lot of ways, thank you very much. In a lot of ways, externally, he looks like he's coping. Like I would take him up to the family calendar and remind him of all of these things he's got to do this week, and he looks at it and he's just like very matter of fact. I got that. But at night he gets nightmares, and during the day he gets like stomach aches and headaches, but he's got very little awareness that this has to do with the accumulated stress from just trying to run with all of these activities and responsibilities he has. So a month ago, 2 months ago, it's probably, I lost track of time, a couple months ago I suppose it is, he was finishing up rehearsal for the musical, walking home, we live within walking distance, walking home and preparing to go to a track meet at like 5:30 or something. Leaving the high school musical, walking home, he's about to like make a really quick transition to go to a track meet. It was like a winter track, you know, pre-season thing. And he hit this, he was standing in the rain and got this feeling like it wouldn't matter if I jumped in front of a car right now. And he came home and I was at work. He called me, I couldn't get the phone call. He called my son who's in college in Ohio, and my son who's in college helped to calm him down, and enough to just like, till I could get home. And I asked him, you know, what was it that preceded, what came before, what happened? And he's like, it was raining and I didn't have a rain jacket. And then I had sent him a text earlier in the day. I was just on his online grades, and they're like such great grades. And I sent him a text saying, that's just a beautiful thing to see. And he took that as like one more, you know, drop of, he took that as pressure. And it turns out that, I mean, he's been in counseling, and this is really, he's working on things, but he didn't have the ability to see that all this stuff was taking a toll on him, which is another sort of theme that I'm going to thread in here, is that so many of our kids right now, and living in such a fast world with so much bombardment with data, don't have time to be with themselves, to know that really it's not, they don't have it all together as it feels like they do. The good news is that Eli, as a result of this, and really like, he's just like, we had been talking about pulling back from one of these things. For a long time I've been telling him, I don't think you can do all those things, and he keeps doing this to me. And so he ended up, of his own accord, deciding to drop track, which was a great decision. And so he's now, and he's got a girlfriend. And I say that only because like he gets to hang out with her after school. Like he's got some time that's like not running, and they get to like listen to music together or watch Netflix, which is, I don't know, normal, you know? Or like, I don't know what normal is really anymore, because really like the old life he had is normal for so many of our kids. But he's still doing music, he's still keeping his grades up, he's looking at all, you know, these colleges, he's gonna do some kind of a summer internship in STEM, but he came to this point of like realizing, it took him like almost literally having to run into a truck to realize like this is more than I can handle. So does that resonate with anybody in any way? And this idea of, so that's how competition and high expectations plays into my family life. And I want to set the tone a little bit more, and then I'm going to ask you, how does this play out in Camas? And really, my plan is to share a couple of like philosophical ideas that we can hang this conversation on, and then share some strategies with you. But mostly what I'm hoping to do is elicit a conversation and help you think about your kids and who they are and what their needs are, and then leave with some ideas about what you can do to sort of stem the tide of the unhealthy impact of expectations like this. So I just told you that. I guess this is part of the two big branches we're going to work with is we're going to talk about self-compassion, and we're going to talk about fixed versus growth mindset. And we're going to talk about how those things apply and work with as an antidote to high pressure. So why am I getting asked to come to schools and talk about this now? I went and talked to a school a few months ago about this, and they brought me in because it was a small private school, and the parents were so anxious about their kids' preparation for college that the parents were putting undue pressure on the teachers. So that's one way that this shows up. So, and I've been asked to come to schools because for younger schools, for kids in elementary school, where playground activity is so competitive because some of the kids in their school are playing in these high-powered club soccer teams, and they bring that level of competitiveness to recess, and some of the kids at recess have no experience at all with soccer. And so it's causing all of these problems, and they don't know how to handle it. So I'm getting brought in to talk to schools about this. And we're culturally, we are just coming out of this, like, you know, when we grew up, and I guess when we grew up and when our children were a little bit younger, was at the tail end of the self-esteem movement, where it was sort of everybody gets a blue ribbon, and you can't tell anybody that they are not the best, and getting C's is intolerable, and there can be no losers. And in fact, we stopped doing competition at all in school because we thought that having winners and losers was going to be a problem, and everything went towards, you know, cooperation and everything. Everybody is always a winner. So that's a theme that's like made this topic become more important. What our kids, you know this, what our kids are learning, Jennifer and I were talking about this at the outset, but what our kids are exposed to in 8th grade is what we were exposed to at junior high school, you know, I mean, as juniors in high school. Or maybe never, honestly, really. You know, and so there's a push to get academics into schools at a younger grade at the expense of social emotional growth, and then there is, you know, things advance so quickly and move so quickly, and again, some of it's driven by our culture and communities, some of it's from kids and some from parents. Obviously, you know, along those lines of academics getting pushed down is this, you know, the development of club athletics, where kids are having to commit to their sport of their career in middle school at the exclusion of being able to sample other things. So all of these things lead to more pressure for kids. Schools sometimes ask me about, well, how do we handle competition in classrooms? And what is the role of cooperation and competition in classrooms? That's something we could talk about today. And where are the strengths and the weaknesses of cooperative activities, and where are the strengths and the weaknesses of competitive activities? And how can we do competitive activities in a classroom in a way that's not so hurtful, or that can be growth producing? In my work about boys in schools, boys tend to be more competitive than girls do. And one way to motivate boys and engage boys in classroom activities is sometimes to utilize competition. So we talk about that. And then obviously, so social media invites comparison, and if we're on Facebook, if we're on Instagram, you know this, I hope that we're seeing the best sides of what other people decide to promote and however they want to create this persona. And then that can leave somebody feeling like I'm not enough and I'm not good enough. And so all of these things are leading to this change in culture for us. And it's so difficult as a parent because so much of our well-being and how we see things is tied into our kids. I remember when my older son was first born, you know, you remember that feeling. I don't think I was the only one, but it's like, I had this feeling that there's some part of me that's out there in the world now, you know, and which is like and then I am now like doubly exposed. It's not just that I'm exposed for my own, you know, safety and well-being, but now like I worry about all their stuff too. So it makes it really difficult. It makes it really difficult to have distance from our kids, which we really need to be good parents. I mean, and that is part of actually the feedback I'm getting on this is a little hard for me.
You're standing right under that, so maybe if you move back or to the side.
Thank you. See if this helps. Thank you. So it makes it really difficult to get perspective, and one of the areas, I'm just going to speak loudly because that's a little bit distracting to me, okay? So one of the areas that I think has so much growth potential for us as parents is exactly in this place. So now I can talk with my hands too, so I'm much better. So is this place of trying to get some distance from our kids as well. And there are subtle ways in which, because of our closeness to our kids, we communicate our implied criticism. So there are little ways that even though I never told my younger son that he had to get the grades he gets and play piano and do track, there are implied ways that I have given him that message that he feels from me. So one of the beauties that I think of being a parent is that ability to get our own perspective, to create some distance from ourselves in regard to our kids, if that makes sense. So there's that, like, I feel really worried about my son. I feel like really concerned about this one personality trait he has, and I think if he doesn't get that fixed, I can't really be relaxed. And so all the little ways that I could be critical of that one little personality trait, or maybe like not even say anything about it, but I'm communicating that to him. And one of the beautiful things about parenting then is to be able to step back for me to say, what's really important here? What am I really feeling about this? What's really important for me to communicate? And how do I give that message in the way that is most skillful so that he can hear it, so that it doesn't come out as more criticism or me telling him all of these ways that he doesn't meet my expectations. Do people see the movie Lady Bird? Some of you saw that, which was like a beautiful representation of how that happens. A painful and beautiful representation of how a mom communicates critique and judgment to her daughter. It's worth looking at. Okay, one of the things about this and this idea of perspective is, I'm pausing on this because I am doing a workshop in Selwood, which is not really close to you guys, Southeast Portland, but it's a full day workshop on parenting teenagers. And a lot of what we talk about is how do you manage to get some objectivity and perspective with your kids so that you could be better parents for teenagers. Okay, so what are you thinking? How come you came to a workshop about high expectations and pressure on kids and competition? And in what ways does this topic play out in this community? How do you see it?
Piggyback off that, it's just really unfortunate that he's not going to play sports because it's so competitive, and you see a lot of 8th graders who go into high school, and because of tryouts and because of the club sports and everything that feed into the one high school,
right,
they don't have that option to do other things in the high school,
right,
if it's sports related and some other areas, so they have, it bounces to, it's sad that they don't have that opportunity,
right,
to do it.
Yeah, I love, rarely I'll meet a kid who's like a junior in high school that's like, I'm going to go out for the football team. And I have, and maybe that can't happen here, but in schools in Portland, you can do that. You can try it. And I was like, that is awesome. High school is all about trying new things and experimenting with things, and to do something like that takes courage. Yeah, there's a boy I'm working with right now who's a sophomore, and he couldn't make the basketball team, so he's like, I'm going to try the tennis team, and he didn't make the tennis team, so he ended up getting on the lacrosse team because he played lacrosse as a kid. But okay, so some of it's about having to be excluded from sports or not feeling like you could do sports. Some of it's about this culture of just more AP classes. What else? How else does this play at home or here?
I have an elementary school child and a preschooler, and
Thank you.
It starts in the playgroup.
Right.
You know, we're all talking, and it almost seems like, you know, we all have college on our mind from the very beginning, as far as like, you know, putting them in activities and
Yeah.
how to make them well-rounded. And I know it comes from a very good place, because we want our children to be well-rounded and
Right.
have good experiences. But I think that that translates into burnout when they get to college, to high school.
Yeah. Some kids can handle it and some kids can't, and some kids do burn out. Were you gonna say something?
I was just going to say, I work at Clark College, and so I get a lot of students who are getting that head start on college because of the pressure of finance, but working our way back. It's amazing how stressed out folks are. And even my 6th grader, I have to start thinking about college. Why are you thinking about college? The poster on the wall says start thinking about college. And so it's in the environment. Again, it's like, and no doubt mom and dad are also adding to that and the things that we do, but it's like, how do we take it down a notch?
Right.
And this was one of those talking points when the gentleman came and talked post suicide. Your kids are high strung.
Right. Yeah.
They are.
Yeah.
And I had to agree.
Right.
And so again,
How do we dial it down a notch? Okay. So let me share some thoughts after your comment.
So one of the things is to get into college now,
Yeah.
your GPA has to be so high.
I know.
And I have a couple friends, their kids are going to San Diego State.
Mm-hmm.
And there's only 37% of applicants get in there.
Yeah.
And then there's other colleges in California. It's like absurd.
I know.
I mean, you have to have over a 4.0.
I know.
So the problem is they have to get good grades.
So you have to get good grades.
We don't know where she's going to go.
Right.
But there's kind of that pressure, it's like, you know, I mean, how do you handle that?
Right.
Because C's are not going to cut it.
No, C's are not going to get you to those colleges. So you have to get, yeah, no, I know. My younger son's looking at colleges now, and they're going there with 4.0s and, 1,500 SAT scores, but there are other options. And I guess it's always going to be a matter of like balancing, how is the impact of this pressure, how is my child handling the impact of this pressure? And it's, again, I want to get back to, it's not about striving, and it's not about not striving, it's not about not having high expectations, but it's about being able to take it down a notch, being able to moderate things when you need to, and finding ways, which I'll share with you here, to insulate ourselves against the part of this that's most unhealthy. So last comment, and then I'll move ahead.
I was going to say, you do get students who push themselves to meet these expectations, but also every year I see a couple of kids who are very capable, but they have completely been paralyzed by the expectations.
Right.
They feel like if I can't compete academically or athletically at that level, I'm out. I'm not
Right.
gonna try it.
Right. Exactly. So that's another outcome of facing that level of pressure, is just not even trying. So, so the two big things we're going to work with here are self-compassion and fixing. You guys talked about those ideas here? Much? Okay, so familiar. So I'll move quickly. I'm going to slow down on the self-compassion one because I just spend so much time with this. So in my office, a lot of times what I will do, so I work mostly with boys, and they're not always so forthcoming with their feelings. So you can't really say, tell me everything. Because, and so, so a lot of times what I'll do is I will listen for their dilemma, and then I will diagram it for them. So I try to make it be a little bit more systematized, a little bit more systematic, a little bit less mysterious, and I draw a flow chart. And so it might be, it's, a common one in a high school kid might be that school's hard, so I don't really try, and then I maybe skip a class, maybe because I'm feeling bad because I'm behind, maybe I smoke pot, maybe my parents catch me, my grades are down, I feel horrible, I'm a loser. Or I'm trying to make friends, but it's important for me to make friends, so I went up to this new kid at the playground, at school, at recess, and I asked him if he wanted to play something. He said no, he insulted me somehow. I took it personally. I felt bad. I got in trouble in school because I threw something after this happened. I'm a bad kid, I'm a loser. In the end, the most toxic part of all of these cycles is that last one, whereas I suck. Like I have no value, I'm a loser, I'm bad, I'm a bad person. And so after I've drawn out that cycle with the kids I'm working with, it kind of becomes like the treatment plan. It sort of becomes, okay, what in here do you have any control over? And what can we do something about? And that one is always something we have something to do, we can always do something about, is how you talk to yourself about that. So the opposite of that is learning ways, and this is an important vaccination against what's toxic about competition and high expectations, is if the most dangerous side of being competitive is if you feel like you have to win to be okay, to have value. The only way I'm okay is if I win by some external measure, and short of that, I'm not okay. And in fact, if I don't win by that external measure, I'm valueless. And so the opposite of that is to treat yourself with kindness. And I can't underestimate, it seems simple in some ways, but I am constantly talking to clients about this, about when you're facing hard things, treat yourself with kindness. Do this thing like give yourself a good job, nice job. You didn't feel like doing that. Even like this guy that I'm working with, a 24-year-old who's really struggling with marijuana addiction and has had all these other things going on in his life, but he can't move forward in his life. But he's working on trying to find like the small things he can do in his life that are successful. And so if he gets to an NA meeting, if he meditates in the day, if he gets out to a fitness class, if he postpones smoking marijuana till later in the day, these are things that he's learning to not be so hard on himself. So at least he's not also, so it's not the I smoke pot, I'm not doing what my peers are doing, blah, 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 and I suck. It's at least and I did some parts of the day today that were okay. And so then it gives him a little bit of a bolster, a little bit of that's the one thing he's feeling good about right now. So so talk to yourself, teach your kids to do this, teach yourself to do this. Today, I do this a lot of times. I really do. I really do. I pat myself and I say, good job, Howard. I really say that out loud. If I had a hard workout and I didn't want to go to the gym and I do it, I'm like, awesome. Those were good decisions you made. And we do that. It's a healthy skill to have, and so teach our kids to do that. The other part of that is that, getting back to this 24-year-old I was in my office with today, is he starts to feel like he's the only one that's struggling. Everybody's struggle has some unique flair, but we struggle. That's part of being human. It's hard. And so for him to the second part of self-compassion is as proposed, which I didn't tell you this, is this is all the work from Kristen Neff, who's a University of Texas professor that's done a lot of work and research into the positive impact of self-compassion. And she ends up, we'll talk about this here in a minute, but she ends up contrasting self-compassion versus self-esteem. So recognize that you're not alone and that we all struggle. And so similar for this boy. So he had this interaction with a person in a bike shop. And the person in the bike shop was kind of rude to him. And so my client's tendency would be oh, he doesn't like me. There's something wrong with me. I suck. I'm a loser. And so, so one of the things that he did was he called his dad and he said, I just had this interaction in the bike shop and I think they didn't like me. And the dad's like, oh, you got to learn how to not take that stuff so personally. He did it in a way that was really supportive to the boy. But what the boy did was he did not stay alone in this. So that's the other part, is like if you think you're a loser and you don't tell anybody. That's the worst combination, is isolating when you're in such darkness. So he did something very skillful, which was to reach out to somebody, and then he got this affirmation that you're not alone. We've all felt that way. Yeah, I was in that bike shop too. They treated me rudely, is what his dad told him. And that was totally magic for this kid. And so, and the third thing is that we have to be able to pay attention to our own negative thoughts, which are sometimes so deeply imbued in our psyche, we can't even see them. So this is about mindfulness. This is about understanding, like paying attention to the words we tell ourselves, and then learning to respond to those words with some equanimity, with some balance a little bit, or a little bit of like less reaction. So these are the three tenets, or the three principles of self-compassion. And it's powerful. There's another boy I'm working with who's 18, and he's got all these health issues that really are preventing him from progressing as fast as his peers are, and he can get really down on himself for not doing that. And so he and I are really working on this a lot. And so it's never occurred to him. It never occurred to him to give himself credit for the small things he does toward his health, because he was all about, I suck because I'm not that. Okay, so self-compassion is really potent. And it's not about like letting yourself off the hook, like, okay, then I'm just gonna like, it's not about being unhealthy. It's not about striving. It's not about not trying to grow. It's not about laying on the couch all day and, eating bonbons and chocolate, potato chips. But it's about try to move forward, do what we're doing to move forward, and then, but give ourselves a break when we face hardship. And she's done this research where she compares it to self-esteem and says that it has the same benefits as high self-esteem, like less anxiety and depression and greater happiness, but it doesn't have the pitfalls of self-esteem, because self-esteem attaches it to some outer product. So it's not associated with the downsides of self-esteem, such as narcissism, social comparison, or ego defensiveness, which we see in our world. We have examples of people that live like this. And it's not, and it's about like, needing to be perceived in some certain way to feel okay. And so she says, instead of endlessly chasing the self-esteem as if it were the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow, I would argue that we should encourage the development of self-compassion. That way, whether we're on top of the world or at the bottom of the heap, we can embrace ourselves with a sense of kindness, which wouldn't we want our kids to have that? Like learn how to do that, to be okay? And what are the ways, one of the most potent ways we could do that for our kids is to try to demonstrate to our kids that that's how we perceive them. That we perceive them as worthwhile and valuable, and that we believe in them. One of the greatest predictors of how a child will learn to trust and grow and believe in themselves is how the parent does that with them.
Just a quick question.
Yeah.
You or anybody else for that matter have a good idea for just a quick one-liner to tell your child when they come to you and say, I'm a terrible person, or
Yeah.
I'm feeling bad about myself.
Yeah.
What's the one quick, easy thing that can diffuse?
Empathize first. Empathize first. I'm sorry you're having a hard day. I'm sorry that you feel that way. When kids come to you like that, you can't talk them out of it right at that moment. So the timing is the second thing. So in that moment, all you could do is empathize and comfort and soothe. And you could tell them, Mommy loves you, you're great, you got all these friends, that sort of thing. Try to talk them out of it. Yeah, I don't think it'll ever work in that moment. And so all the best you could do then is empathize, but then it's outside of those situations, and this is not a one-liner, this is not a one-time let me tell you how it is and then you get it. But it's an over and over and over thing, and some of it comes from you. Like I would tell my son the story of like this morning I didn't want to go to the gym, but I did, and I had this great workout, and then I got to, like I really do that. Or I tell my kids to do that same thing to themselves. So it comes from you and what you demonstrate. And then the conversations, like what I would say an offline conversation, so not in the heat of the moment, not when they're really feeling so crappy, but offline or when they're in a more calm place, then it is like, we have a lot of, I'll talk to you about this here in a little bit, but we have a lot of influence over our well-being that teenagers don't understand usually. A lot of adults don't understand either, but teenagers for sure don't understand the sort of the potency they have over their well-being. And one of the things that we do to ourselves that really affects our well-being is how we speak to ourselves about ourselves. So, a few ideas.
For me,
Please.
it's always one of those challenges of, is this, I'm reaching out, I want some help, and gosh, I have to do this for myself. And, this idea of becoming a teenager is I'm learning to become more independent versus
Yeah.
dependent upon you. And so it's always that, for me, it's finding that it's like, okay, you can acknowledge in the moment, but when and how soon do you circle back?
Yeah.
And it's a challenge, and it's a dance.
It's a dance, it's an art, for sure.
And some days it's just not going to look good.
Right, exactly, totally. Some days you hit it right, maybe more often you don't. But it is an art, and so like figuring out the timing, and you got to know your kids and like who they are and under what circumstances are they most at ease and relaxed, and sometimes you got to store these ideas up, to share back at the right moment when there's time and there's a lot of pressure and there's some ease. So I'm going to move through this quickly because this sounds like this is something you guys have spent time on, and the idea is that we need to recognize our kids for their effort, not for their outcome. And although, my son's gotten all these grades that I really like make me want to text him and tell him these grades are beautiful, I really try. It's funny I say that right now. I heard myself say that. So, but I try more often to give him credit for working hard at things. Like it's the effort, and it's the effort that transfers to other things. Some kids, school just comes naturally, and it doesn't take that much effort. But when you do find moments of that, it's like the fixed mindset versus growth mindset. Fixed mindset says, he's just smart. That's why he does well. And growth mindset says, well, it's about how you approach it and how that you can grow it. You can grow that part of yourself by working hard. And so really focusing on that sort of feedback for your kids as opposed to, you're so smart, or something that they can't do anything about. You're so beautiful. You're so, we tell them they're beautiful and that sort of thing too, but make sure that we also give them credit for their effort, and what we focus on with them is what they will grow. Okay. So we as parents need to find the balance. We need to know how hard to push our child, how much to, so the comment back there was that sometimes kids will face this pressure and then just retreat. And sometimes kids will face this pressure and rise up, and so so we have to figure out what the right balance is and what's missing to their success. So I want to help parents when I'm working with families. I want to help them to consider the tension between their expectations and their resources. If it's your expectation that they accomplish this much, but their ability is like this, I had this really simple example of this tonight with my office. 8th grade boy and his mom, and they were talking about chores around the house. And he's actually for an 8th grade boy, he's really responsible. A lot of us would like this in our house. But this mom, it wasn't enough for her. And so one of his chores is to wash the pots and pans after dinner. And it kind of came out that he doesn't really know exactly how to wash the pots and pans. That was a new job that got added on. And so there's a lot of frustration and tension in the house because there's this expectation that that does the pots and the pans, but he haven't learned the way to really do that. So he struggles to do it, and it really frustrates him. And mom gets really critical of him for being irresponsible when he's doing all these other things like so beautifully. But so there's a gap there between what he knows how to do and what the expectation is. And so her job then, and what came out today, is to backfill. Like when he first started cleaning his bedroom, or he first started, doing a chore around the house, he used to do it with his mom. And then he learned how to do it. And then he became able to do it on his own. And this is one of those things that they sort of just skipped. And he's feeling a little bit at a loss about how to do that. And so she wants to now, we talked about her trying to do it with him for a little bit before he takes it over. And that's like kind of sort of a silly example, although in this family it's tense. And so, but you got your own examples of how this works. And, there were times where my kids, I didn't feel like they were doing enough in all these like true confessions right now. So I got this other one. So when my older son was in 7th grade, I was really worried about like the limited amount of writing he was doing in school, because I was doing all this research about education and boys in education in particular. And I really saw how boys in education and how boys were struggling with literacy. And he was doing so little of it in school, so this is bad. I decided I was going to give him an assignment to like write a journal entry about our family vacation. It's bad, except that it's so instructive. And so, and he wrote something, and I'm not an English teacher, but I knew what he wrote wasn't all that good, and so I told him, I did the English teacher thing. I said, like, can you show and not tell? But I didn't really know how to teach him how to do that. And so I was adding all this pressure on him, and he was adding all this resistance to me. It was bad. And so he crumbled because the expectation I had for him way exceeded his capacity to meet my expectation, and I didn't have the ability to help him develop those resources, and he didn't have it within himself. So this is stuff that we're looking for, and a lot of times in our kids, when they hit those moments of crumbling, it's because there's some expectation that exceeds their resources, either their own skills and abilities or their, what's around them.
Can you go back to that example of writing the journal?
Yeah.
What would you do differently now? Because having him write is not a bad idea if that's where he's struggling, at least in my mind.
Yeah.
It's not a bad idea. How would you do that differently?
I would have tried to partner with the school and have that come through the school, as opposed to me not assigning it.
Okay.
Yeah. And ultimately, here's the thing. He's a junior in college, and he's getting internships to be he's an awesome writer.
He's doing just fine.
He's doing great. I had nothing, it's silly, really, like the worry that I had about it. I mean, he got this great scholarship to go to college, and yeah, he's a great writer. He's a much better writer than I am. Honestly, really, he's a much better writer. And so that would be the thing I really wish I would have known, was like, don't sweat this. He's 7th grade, It's really hard to know how to do that, but that would be the wish I had. Okay, so I want to see where we are, and I feel like I've been a little bit off track, but we're okay. So I want to do this. I want you to think about your children for a moment, and think about these questions, like the particular pressures that they face. What are the things that come up? What are the features in your family that I would call are the resources, the things that offer stability, support, comfort? And then what are recently a time when you've clashed with them that could have been, you might have been able to not take on that clash. Like you might have been able to not make your son write that journal entry. So take a minute. If you're either, take notes for yourself. If you're here by yourself, if you're here with somebody else that you're parenting with, then you could have a conversation with them, or if you're with friends, feel free to talk. But just for a minute, really look at the world through the eyes of your children. List the pressures that they're facing, and then catalog the resources that they have. We'll do this for a few minutes.
Then I'm curious what's going to happen next year transitioning to middle school.
Uh-huh.
With the not a lot of big assignments and projects for homework, and the few that she has, the pressure and tears and things that she has to work through on them,
yeah.
How it's going to transition to
right.
as she moves up in the class and gets higher, just that expectation and pressure she puts on herself.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Did you, so let me talk about that. So the question is, if you couldn't hear it, is what about, so the transition from 5th grade to 6th grade, where she's already feeling really wound up about homework, although there's not very much. And so the concern for her mom is what's going to happen when she gets to 6th grade. So that's one of the pressures she faces through her eyes is all the amount of work that she has to do and her school stuff. What are the features that offer her stability? What's comfort, what's stability, what's predictable, what's calming to her?
I feel like our house life is very stable and routine, and she has a few extracurricular activities she enjoys.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so it's just kind of working through those few projects this year,
Mm-hmm.
and then the transition with next year. But
Mm-hmm.
I feel like the stability is there for the most part. It's just when those bigger things
Mm-hmm.
arise,
Mm-hmm.
how she works through them.
Yeah, that's good. Do other people have that homework thing where like kids get really overwhelmed with homework, the amount of homework, and leads to tears, and other ideas about how do people get through that? We'll hear from both of you. Go ahead.
My
Thank
son-
you. You're good.
My son struggled with homework, and it was really more, he didn't know how to do it. Meaning
Yeah.
not that the teacher didn't teach it, it was setting down the time and putting it in the steps for him
Right.
was what he needed.
Right. So that's probably there's somewhere in there some version of the steps.
Yeah, and different projects can be different for
Right.
kids. So, here's a speech. How do I set up a speech? And I also found he didn't think like I thought. So my idea of how to do it, but maybe my husband's idea was
Yeah.
more his line of thinking, and so it worked that way.
Good.
But giving him the option, which one works for you? Try it once this way or try
Right.
this one. Which one do you
Right.
like better?
Right. What were you going to say?
My son is high anxiety with homework, and we struggled for the first couple of months a lot. And we're just in elementary school, but it was just the expectations that he put on himself and not knowing the organizational skills at home to do the homework, expectations from teacher. And it really took to getting into the first 3 to 4 months when he had that stability in the classroom of knowing the teacher expectations. So much wasn't at home and not having that support from us, but it was really feeling comfortable with his own classroom and what his teacher expected.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like now, next year when we go into the next grade, we'll have that, like, okay, this is rough at the beginning of the year, but
Right.
once he figures out routine and expectations of the teacher, that he'll ease into it, and now he does
Yeah.
really well. So
That's good.
It took a few months, and
Right.
it was hard.
Right. So there are a few things in there. One is one of the factors for him that really helped him to not be so worried about homework was that when he started to feel more confident as a student, comfortable, confident as a student. And then the other thing I hear from you is now you've sort of seen that pattern, and then you can trust that he might hit the next grade with a rocky start, but you're working on trusting. You kind of said you were trusting. So you're trusting he's going to work through it and he's going to get it figured out. So that's part of what you want to communicate to your daughter is like, we'll do this. We're going to do this, and you can do this. And another thing I do with kids about homework is like they really. So two things just come to my mind. One is that they tend to overestimate how long it's going to take. And so a good practice is to teach them how to estimate. My son's the opposite. He thinks it's going to be really fast and it takes him much longer. But try to help him estimate it. The other thing is like like anything in life, the more emotional resistance you put up against something, the more pain you're going to feel. And so that's the thing about anxiety is anxiety leads people to want to avoid a lot of times, and then it's in that avoidance that the anxiety builds.
Well, and you don't learn in that moment.
And yeah, and if you're all wound up, you're not learning, right? Right.
I was just going to add, I'm a highly anxious person, so the things that worked for me with my mom was that she always
Great.
used the phrase, just do your best. And
Yeah.
then also another thing was that the reason why you have anxiety is because you care.
Yeah.
And that's a good thing.
Yeah.
You need to not try to fight them.
Right,
You
for
need to
sure.
embrace it.
Yeah. And don't think, exactly. So anxiety in and of itself is not a bad thing. There is motivation in there to take action and use it to your advantage. Yeah.
So I'm
Yes.
wondering about social pressures for kids.
Yeah.
And
You know, I was a kid, went through it, and I feel like it's just something you gotta go through, but as a parent watching children struggle with who to play with on the playground at recess, who to sit with at lunch, you know, they
Yeah.
call me names, they don't like me, they don't play with me, they won't let me do this. It's so hard, and to know, you know, on the backside, I can say, you're a great person, and, you know, you're gonna come out of this okay, but in the moment,
Yeah.
those social pressures they face seem to be so overwhelming at
Yeah.
such an age already.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know how to really help him in that, because I'm not on the playground with him, and I
Yeah.
can't hold his hands, and he has to figure it out himself.
Yeah. I mean, those two things, our kids and their grades and our kids and their social lives. You know, back to that slide early on that I said how difficult it is to parent because so much of our experience is intertwined with their experience, that's a big one. Like to watch our kids struggle socially is so painful for parents, so painful. So part of what you need to do is, you know, work on your own part of it, like what your needs are about that and what you really worry about. And then a lot of empathy, sorry you're having a hard day, you know, and then figure out what's going on, really what is. So in a situation like that, like trying to get more information, like maybe talk to the school, what do they observe, spend time at the playground at recess if you can, observe, see what you're seeing. It's really hard to know. It's really hard to know when he comes home or she comes home and tells you that story, what's really happening. So trying to get more information would be helpful. Other things from here, any other like ideas like, oh, that one situation, I probably could have handled that better. Or a realization like you've got something in place at home that's really solid.
Can I ask a quick opinion for you?
Yeah.
The personal pleasures that counteract the pressures.
Yes.
I think immediately, at least for my son, my daughter is very good at art and,
Yeah.
movement, and my son
Yeah.
goes to the electronics, right?
Really?
Get on the phone, watch the TV, do a video game. At some point, it counteracts the pressures.
It does.
And at other points, it
It's
definitely puts a whole
Totally.
lot more pressure.
It sure does. Yeah.
So how, is there a balance?
Yeah, there is a
See
balance.
that at all?
There is a balance.
Okay.
There is. And then that's another one of those things. Somewhere in here we talked about how do we help our kids to develop that sense of where the balance is, you know, because that's ultimately what we're trying to do is we're trying to raise adults. Right. So how do they take responsibility for their own, you know, excess of video games? Sometimes you could play video games for 20 minutes or an hour or whatever, or watch Netflix, and it's a total, like, it's relaxing. Right. And sometimes you could play for hours and it's about just further avoiding your responsibilities. And yeah, kids can get that. Kids can figure that out, but that comes from us asking good questions, helping them to reflect, and maturity. So it's rare. I've had middle school kids who come to that. It's more common in high school that they start to see that, but yeah. But you're right. That is the most likely personal pleasure for most boys. Okay, so the spheres of influence. This is important. I share this with most kids I talk to. And the idea is that there are some parts of your life that you can control, some parts of our life that you can only like influence, and some parts of our life that you can't do anything about, but be worried, fearful, concerned, regret. And we struggle in life when we don't control the things we can control. And it's the serenity prayer, right? Really, we don't control the things we can't control. We try to control something we can't, or we spend too much time out in the world of thinking about stuff we can't do anything about. This reminds me of what you were talking about your child learning. I can't remember exactly what you said, but I was thinking about like your child learning that they have some influence over their well-being. Oh, because it's about what they focus on. Do they always? Yeah, what they focus on. So, so one of the things that we want kids to do is understand that they have some influence over their well-being. And one of the ways to do that is to understand, you know, what they have control over and what they don't. So like your child's social struggles on the playground, they really don't have control over whether the other kids like them or not. Can't do it. Just can't do that. We can influence it, but we can't control that. And sometimes, like, it might not be Like at some point, it might be helpful for your child to begin to realize like they really can't. I spend a lot of time with kids who spend a lot of time trying to make that happen, trying to be perceived in a certain way by their peer group, being very calculated about it, very planful about it, dressing the right way, listening to the right music, speaking the right way, playing the right video games, with the hope that it's going to lead somebody else to like them, and in the end, we can't control that. But we can control, you know, how do we think about ourselves? Do we take care of our homework? How do we handle our interpersonal relationships? How do we handle our things with our parents? You know, do we do drugs? Do we get exercise? Those kinds of things. As parents, the flip side is you can't control your kids. Yeah, you're going to keep trying. I'm going to keep trying, but eventually, you know, they keep teaching you that they're their own being, and we can't create a certain grade outcome. We can't create a certain friend group for them. We can't even, you know, prevent them from taking, you know, doing drugs or doing other risky behavior. We can influence all those things, but we can't truly control it. So helping kids to see that, like I spend a lot of time with people, and like it's a good visual. And then we will list all the things that they can control. And for a lot of kids, they don't think that they have much control because it doesn't feel like it to them. But when you start to say, well, you do, like you have as much control as, you know, the next person does, and it's about these things. And really, if you make good decisions about these things, you're generally going to be all right. You were going to say
I was
something?
just going to say, I like the phrase that it's okay to feel uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Like many times students think, especially in new learning, that it's
Yeah.
not normal to feel uncomfortable, and I don't
Yeah.
think we teach our
Yeah.
own kids that
I know.
it's normal to feel uncomfortable.
Right. Yeah, it's hard to tolerate that for us sometimes as parents. And so, yeah, to be okay with their discomfort, and it's okay to have, you know, empathize with the fact that she feels crummy and doesn't have friends, or that he had a bad time at recess, but
In a certain subject.
or they're not good at this, or that they struggle at that, and that's okay. Yeah. There's another family I'm working with that this boy is a sophomore. This is the boy that like tried out for basketball. He's a sophomore. He tried out for basketball freshman year. This is an amazing thing, really. So he tried out for he played basketball in middle school. Tried out for basketball at a high-powered Portland Public School, high school, as a freshman. Got cut, and then tried out again as a sophomore. Got cut, or didn't actually make the team, and then decided he was going to try out for tennis. And he like never really played tennis and didn't make the team. and then tried out for lacrosse. But in my mind, the grit in that and the resilience that you would, like, not many kids would do that. Like, try again. And so okay, that's his situation. So that's a quality in him that's like a superior strength in his. And he's not doing drugs. He's basically listening to his parents' home expectations. He could be more gracious in how he handles his relationships with his parents, but his parents could certainly be more gracious in how they handle their relationship with him as well. But the parents are freaked out about him. And because mom's a doctor and she sees all these things that could go wrong. And there's a lot that could go wrong, and it's scary to raise a teenager, and there's a lot that they're being exposed to. Her particular child is not like doing those things. So we talk about trying to tease out the parts of her anxiety that are generic, and that's really her responsibility. He's not earned that. So, and we do that a lot. We could worry about things in general that don't really necessarily pertain to our particular child. And so how do we learn to get perspective on that, talking to other parents? Like, that's one of the things about my job, is that, I've met with thousands and thousands and thousands of teenagers, and this is her first. In most families I meet with, it's like their one teenager, it's their one experience. They have no idea how good they have it. And that, and they're worried. And so And this last thing, I've been thinking about this a lot, about the subtle ways that we could critique and add pressure to our children, the subtle ways that we might, this is kind of comes back to that ladybird idea, the subtle ways that we might communicate to our kids that they're not okay. It's a lot. And we always want more for our kids, and there's some part of parenting that's always about like wanting to help our children develop in certain ways. There's always some part of that. But how can we do that in a way that's more direct? And it happens in little ways. I'm trying to think of this example because it's been coming up a lot with my son that's a junior right now. Lots of ways which it's harder for me to just like to be at ease with him. His style and my style are not quite in sync. He's a lot about ideas. I'm a lot about like heart, and so it's hard for us to quite get it. And it's a little awkward at times. And then, then I've got all my worries about him, that I want him to get better at this and get better at that so he could be healthy as an adult. But all those are all my problems. And so just recently I've been really working on trying to find the ways that he's just okay. And he's gonna be okay. And how can I communicate that to him? And it's been work to get to because of my worry for him, but that's my problem. And so then when I can do that, I can be more direct. If there's some we were at dinner with he's got this thing where he's not like totally socially smooth, and so we're at dinner. There's 3 of us, and there's a guest at the house, and Eli will look at me and start to tell me this like personal thing between the 2 of us. He does this over and over, and for me that's like initially it's just like I get this critique of like, oh my gosh, you're so you don't know how to do this. But then I'm realizing I just don't want to communicate that to him anymore. I really want to teach him how to do that better. So I had this moment where I was able to say, okay, why don't you, so when you just did that to me, you left her feeling like she's not being included. Why don't you go, like give the beginning of the story to the person that's the guest, and then you can, catch them up like you do, like when we do that well. So, yeah. And then, lots of things that I'm really trying to work on because I really want to communicate to him. Like again, the thing, when I look back to my parents, I wasn't always like doing the right thing. I gave them plenty of cause to be concerned. But they always communicated to me that they believed in me. Like even really sometimes when I look back at it, like against like evidence. And my dad, who was in that generation of dads, that was like he just worked and he came home and he was really like out of touch with everything that was happening. But he always communicated to me that he believed in me and that he was proud of me and that he accepted me. And when I look back at what a gift that was that I got from him, that he was like that steady presence of an adult in my life who communicated to me that I was okay in his eyes. So work on that.
Well, can you talk about, because you can get that from home, but then you go to school.
Yeah, and you don't necessarily get it from your...
That, you have the
Yeah.
influence of peers.
Right.
And, you hope that
Okay.
you get first crack at
Right.
things, right?
Right. So one of the things I talk to kids about is to try to... so some kids can get like little darts thrown at them by other kids and not be affected by it. Some kids, there could be a dart thrown at another kid and your kid feels it. Right? So, and so I talk to kids about this idea of trying to like make your target smaller. Like figure out, like this is an elementary school situation that I talk about, but figure out, just because there's a dart thrown in the classroom doesn't mean that person intended for you or that you even need to allow it to hit you. And so, we talk about trying to make the target smaller and then figure out, there are some things that are gonna really, you wanna stand up for, but lots of things that are said in schools are just, they can be cruel. So lots of things that are said in school are things that we could just sort of like let go of and not let in. So I will talk to kids about, okay, if you've got a target on your chest, what are the things that you think are target worthy? And it's like, you know, insulting my family. Like some personal attack on me. You know, you are whatever. But everything else is like, let it go. So, you know, it's not uncommon in elementary school there's this one boy I'm working with where the girls start this chant that girls are better, boys are dumb, whatever. It's more clever than that, but something like that. And this boy gets so offended by that sort of like playground stuff. And so he's learned to not let that stuff hit his target. It used to wreck him. But now he comes in and talks to me about like, yeah, like I really don't let things hit the target anymore. There's a couple of things, this thing happened. Or if something does hit the target, what was it about that situation that made you be like vulnerable? Was it that you were, you know, your mood was vulnerable that day? You were hungry, you were tired, you were worried about your dog who was sick in the vet or something like that, you know? So that's something, like to learn how to not take that personally. And if you know, Jimmy is in your classroom and Jimmy's throwing darts at everybody and he occasionally hits you, this is a Jimmy problem, you know? He's just a dart thrower. And so, so don't be like, you know, learning how to not take things so personally. This 24-year-old today I was with, and he was in the bike shop, and the bike person treated him rudely, and he thought, that person doesn't like me. That's tough. But then we talk about what are all the other possible things that were going on that led to that person's rudeness. You know, give me 10 other reasons other than you're unworthy. So try to tease it out and come up with multiple, you know, points of view on that. With an elementary school, we talk about calibrating your level of competition. So that one school brought me out because recess soccer was so competitive. And so we talked, and it's like, maybe it's easier said than done, but the idea is to try to, you know, you got your club soccer level of playing and you've got your pickup soccer level of playing. There's the all-comers at recess and there's the kids that are practicing 5 days a week. And, you know, how can you make your recess time be more fun for everybody? You don't always have to win. Practice not comparing yourself to others, and yeah, there's some families that have like ping pong tables in their house, and that the loss in the ping pong games, when somebody loses the ping pong game, is like so great that they like won't play anymore. So then it's like, you just have to keep playing, but just learn how to do it. There's smiles in the background, but learn how to do it, and how do you? And you could teach it, pre-teach it. I'm not going to play with you unless we like practice this skill. After the game, this is the routine. We shake hands and we say good game. Just how we do it in the house. And so you could teach the losing, gracious losing, and gracious winning. Especially difficult with siblings. I talk to high school kids almost always. When I first meet them, I ask about their cell phone use and how they use it and what social media do they use. And one of the things in the control, influence, concern sphere that they have control over is their relationship to their phone. And one of the things that will have a great impact on their well-being is skillfully using their phone. So for the kids that are on Facebook or Instagram all the time, or on Snapchat and it's bringing them down, everything that they see, they could delete that app, or at least temporarily delete that app and experiment with it. So that's just prone for comparison and feeling like you're not good enough. You're not something enough. You didn't go to the best vacation. Your life is mundane. Something like that. So a lot of this we've talked about before. In classrooms that want to manage competitive activities, we talk about that idea of setting meta goals. So your personal record, or having goals that are about that are not so much the product of the competition, but the spirit of cooperation among your team. How many comments were made that were supportive comments, those kinds of things, encouraging comments. To take the sting out of competition. So if you want to use competition in a classroom because you think it'll motivate students, a skillful way to do that is to randomize the ultimate winner, so that for example, you win a competition and you get a ticket that goes into a drawing, and the drawing happens some weeks down the road. So your whether you win or not is not directly related to whether you win the ultimate prize, or you focus on these sort of like the process of cooperation. So I want to speak to anxiety for a little bit, and then I think that's about my last comment, then we'll pause and have a little bit more conversation. We're almost done, but my son's story that I started with, he had no idea that he was like at a 9 out of 10. He just didn't know that it was going to take a day in the rain without a rain jacket to put him over the top. He did not realize that running from musical practice to a track meet was stressful, because he's listening to music all the time, running from one thing to the next. This is a place that I have been really critical of him, to not be slowing down. So this thing inspired him for a little while. So he uses Headspace, which is an app that is great for teenagers about mindfulness. The guy's voice works for teenagers. The style of the videos works. So my son, right after this happened, decided to use even though I've been talking to him about this for a long time. He decided he was going to start to use Headspace, and that he was going to, when he commuted to work or to school in the morning, he was not going to listen to his headphones. He was just going to have a little bit of just listen to the sounds around him time. And he was going to try to get up a little bit earlier in the morning so he wasn't so rushed to get out of the house. So those are really significant, the spheres of control, those are really significant changes he made that he has control over, that really impacted his well-being. But he just didn't see it coming. So we need to learn to recognize that it's coming. The 3 C's are calm your body. Everything that has to do with managing anxiety is calming your body, correcting your thinking, not taking things so personally, don't think you're a loser, and then confronting your fears. People really underestimate the impact of how we handle our relationships to our well-being. How skillfully we approach our parents, how skillfully we as parents approach our kids. I know for me, the 2 things in that control list that are most important to me usually are exercise and how I handle my relationships. If I can skillfully be effective with parenting, mostly it is, then my days go much better. If I stew in my, criticism or something like that, not so good. Any other thoughts about what any of those mean, what I'm referring to, or other thoughts about managing anxiety?
Just clarifying breathes, breath suppression.
Oh, suspension, yeah, hold your breath out. So inhale, exhale, hold it out.
What is the demand delay?
So if the phone asks for your attention, you don't always have to give it your attention. So you can, there are demands. Ishai was out here, I know, talking about technology and cell phone use. I imagine, so you could change the settings on your phone to not always get bombarded with the stuff we're bombarded with. So this is funny because so my kids are really good at Scrabble, and I will never win a Scrabble game. They know all the 2-letter words. They know all the 2-letter words, all the words that start with X, and I just I just don't. And so for me, playing Scrabble with my kids is like a place of feeling like I don't feel good about myself, but I will play with them just to be with them, and I'll give it my best, and then they'll like dazzle me with all these things. And it was funny though, we were playing Scrabble, and for some reason I picked up the rules to Scrabble, and this was the last one. It says that this is in the Scrabble rules, which really surprised me because Scrabble does not feel like this to me at all. But keep in mind that anyone can beat anyone else with a certain amount of luck. Also remember that everyone draws poor combinations of tiles at times, so when you do, take pleasure in making the best play you can. Finally, don't dwell on your mistakes. Everyone makes them, so go easy on yourself and just enjoy playing. Which is, again, like not at all my experience of that game, but but it does summarize a lot of what we've talked about, like, you know, focusing on the process, not getting so hard on yourself, not always being attached to the outcome. So yeah, kind of funny that that's how Scrabble sees it. So one more reminder, and that is that that I am teaching this class in 2 weeks in Selwood. If you want, there's a flyer up there. There might be some left. There is, and then it's on my website as well. So visit my website. And then, as Jennifer mentioned earlier, there's other events on the website as well as activities and workshops coming up and resources that are available on there. So let me pause there. And then, how are we here?
So we have about 5 minutes left. If anybody has any additional thoughts or questions for Howard, this would be the time to do that, or he can stay for the next 10 minutes and you can chat with him then.
Yeah.
But how about if we go around and give him a round of applause for his time?
Thank you, Jennifer.
The other thing that's really important to note is that several of you made comments about different things that it would be worth checking out our archive videos. I brought in really awesome students that don't know each other, so they know each other's work. But the first one was on anxiety, and the second one was on electronics and the brain. So we have those videos archived on our student wellness page. So you're welcome to watch them. So thank you all for coming out on this rainy Tuesday night. So we really appreciate it. So thank you so much.
One quick thing, it says on there, address sibling rivalry.
Yeah, I skipped that, didn't I?
Yeah, you did.
Yeah. It's just such a root of competition.
Right.
And so it's a big, I skipped it because I was running out of time. But so sibling rivalry is a big topic. And, you know, one of the, they're competing for your attention.
Right.
Is what that's about. So how do we set that up in a way that they become more skilled in handling it? How do we give them each as individuals the attention that they need, so they're not feeling the competition for your attention?
So it's not just telling them it's not a competition, that doesn't help much.
Doesn't really help.
Try that.
But like a big thing, how many kids do you have?
2,
Yeah.
but they're very close in age.
Yeah.
Very close in age.
Be strategic about getting time with them as individuals. Really be like, and it takes a lot of management as a family. Like you really have to schedule out to do that. But once a month, each of you get a time with one child without the other one. So, like I think that's really, and hey, it's so useful, so helpful to do it now and establish it as a habit, so that later on, when the stakes might get higher, you've got this routine of this is the thing we do. We hang out, and so it's not always like to talk about like the talk or things that are heavy, but that's just a routine. But then when you need to have the talk, that routine's in place. So that's a quick idea about sibling rivalry. There is a good book called Siblings Without Rivalry. It's worth reading. Yeah, yeah. All right, so I'm going to be around for a few minutes. Please feel free to ask questions if you want to. Otherwise, thank you very much for your thoughts and your attention and your participation. Welcome.